Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute. You're watching Devil's Advocate. That's it right there. See, Devil? Never mind. David Martosko is the editorial editor of probably the favorite next to Complete Colorado.
Now we're talking.
The Daily Caller. David, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. I'm so excited to be talking at your ATF event, and that's what I'm here for. I know we're airing a little bit later, but boy, I'm just so pleased to be in Denver.
For those people who don't know, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Party is an Independence Institute original. We smoke, we drink, and we shoot. Sadly, the lawyers don't let us do it in that order. But the idea of this, which is it's now a decade old, and it's got this great national reputation, there's this feeling that you can't have these things anymore. Right. This party that we came up with a decade ago was just to celebrate the perks of adulthood. And we smoke, we drink, we shoot, we do all those things that people used to do.
How come no SUVs and cupcakes?
Oh no,
those are the things that are being
There's Twinkies, there's SUVs, and
good.
This year we're going to have 64-ounce big gulp
And are you going to hand out bituminous coal too? All the things that are being threatened into extinction.
All the things. And I wanted to talk to you about that. But first, let's talk a little bit about the Daily Caller. The Daily Caller is one of the premier news aggregators.
Well, I wouldn't call us an aggregator. I mean,
what would you call it?
Well, we're a news organization. The vast majority of our content is original reporting. We've got a newsroom full of reporters at the Daily Caller. We're nothing like the Huffington Post, which basically aggregates and rips off news from all over the country. We are breaking news stories all the time. And so a lot of what we do is original reporting. A little bit of what we do is aggregating content that we think we can't improve on that, so we'll aggregate the story. But really, we're a full-fledged news outlet the way the Washington Post or the New York Times is.
Is this the new model? In other words, here in Colorado, in Denver, the media is just imploding. It's an amazing thing here on Colorado Public Television to still have local content, and that's an amazing thing. But you look at radio is slowly imploding. The newspapers are just been destroyed. Rocky Mountain News, of course, out of business. The Denver Post is now just a newsletter.
And you know who you can thank for that, by the way?
Tell me.
Craigslist killed newspapers. I mean, so many newspapers, as recently as 10 years ago, were making 30-40% of their margins on classified ads. Craigslist came along, so long newspapers.
All for free. So in the same way, if you talk to somebody who's 30 years old, they don't pick up a newspaper. They don't know why you'd pick up a newspaper.
Line of birdcage.
The line of birdcage. But they'll use their iPad. They'll use their computer. So Huffington Post, Daily Caller, Drudge, Complete Colorado, are these the new news sources?
Actually, I think it's almost leapfrogged them in terms of being primary news sources. I talk to, say, a 25-year-old reporter in my newsroom and say, where do you get your news? You know what the answer is? I log onto Facebook and I see what my friends are reading. That's now the trustworthy barometer. Edelman Public Relations does this thing every year called a trust barometer survey. They ask people, who do you trust for information? Who do you find reliable? And increasingly, over the last decade or so, it's moved away from celebrity spokespeople, doctors, the government certainly, and it's moved toward this nebulous category of people like me. So we trust our peer group, our family, our closest friends, our colleagues, our classmates, our workmates.
And media keeps going down in that survey.
But the idea is that social media, which is by definition people like me, they're people I've chosen to like or follow, that's where people are getting their news. So it's becoming this sort of self-ghettoization of news. I'm only getting the news that the people who are most like me find interesting. So we're finding people are retreating into their little news bunkers and only reading what they think is, what their friends think is important.
I can see the attraction of that. But isn't that dangerous?
It is.
I mean, you open up, this is what happens. You open up the Denver Post and go, damn it, and you throw it away. Right. But at least you get some of the other side.
Well, that's why I think outlets like the Daily Caller are so important, because we have such a wide variety of content that we become sort of like a chamber of commerce for news. It's like there's little this, little that, the other. We're the only big news outlet in America that has a guns and gear section. We actually have a whole section of the newspaper, if you will, about guns and gear and survivalists and hunting and all that stuff. We've also got an entertainment page and an elections page. And all
you do a cigar page as well.
I write a cigar column called Cigar Hunter. So there's something that's going to appeal to each little news ghetto. And then when people come to the site to see it, they're exposed to everything else. But that's really the new model. You have to really work very hard to attract this ghetto demographic and that ghetto demographic. The people whose friends really, really are into NASCAR and hunting, and they really don't care about the Olympics or the presidential race. You got to reach out to them and meet them where they are. And that's what the old legacy media is horrible at. Most television news broadcasters don't know how to do that. They've got their formula. top breaking story, local news, sports, weather, blah, blah, blah. They haven't changed that for 50 years. And the New York Times and the Washington Post can't figure out how to do it. The page size keeps getting smaller.
How many people are going to the Daily Caller?
In a given month, between 5 and 6 million unique visitors. That puts us in a class that's bigger than the New Yorker, bigger than Rolling Stone, bigger than the Boston Globe, the Chicago Tribune, the Atlantic Monthly. It's immense. We're not yet at New York Times numbers. We're not yet at certainly the Daily Mail in England is the biggest news site in the world.
With the best stories.
The best, the best photography and the best headlines.
Best headlines. I mean, what I love about the Daily Mail is it's the National Enquirer
really
online.
Is, yeah.
And and if you want to see naughty photographs, that's where you're going to go.
No idea what you're talking about.
I have no idea either. So I want to get to you, get to why I asked you out to speak.
Sure.
We've known each other for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And you've done such great work over the years about the Nanny State. And it's
yeah.
one of those things you kind of laugh at for a little bit because you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't drink big sodas, you get rid of trans fat. Our alcohol, tobacco, and firearms party is really a celebration of life before the Nanny State. I think there's a bigger danger to the Nanny State rather than just some chuckles on the side. I believe the Nanny State is it's the gateway drug to big government.
It's one of them, certainly. I've been following this for well over a decade. Before I was the executive editor at the Daily Caller, I represented a nonprofit group called the Center for Consumer Freedom for a lot of years. Wonderful, very interesting group. And it was all about the nanny culture. And I learned over time that it's not so much the Michael Bloombergs and the Chuck Schumers that you have to worry about. It's the hordes of nameless, faceless bureaucrat pencil pushers whose sole purpose is to justify their existence by maintaining this regime of bureaucratic nannyism. It angers me that they have jobs that are protected by government unions. It makes me sick to my stomach that they think they know what's best for me and you. It makes me very sad that they sleep well at night. But that's really the enemy.
Let's describe it, but with some examples here. What are we talking about? I mean, really, if I want a cigarette, I can still get a cigarette. If I want some booze, I can still get some booze. I can still go out and shoot my gun. I can't get any more trans fat.
You only see these things in terms of contrast with other cultures. I just got back from 10 days in Morocco and France. Okay.
So apparently the pay at the Daily Caller is doing pretty well.
No. It was somebody else paid for it. It was I was invited as a member of the media to tour Morocco and parts of France, and highly recommended, by the way, for journalists out there. Junkets are cool, but in Morocco you can smoke cigars in your hotel rooms. There are ashtrays on every table in every restaurant. In France, a large number of the restaurants are outdoor cafes with ashtrays at the ready. That's just tobacco. You wouldn't think of limiting somebody's access to a bottle of wine in France, no matter how far they were driving it when they go home. You would never think of banning any food from the menu. This is the land of foie gras, truffles, escargot, God knows what else. I was in China a couple of years ago, and the things they eat over there would shock us. They don't waste anything. The idea of actually, on purpose, affirmatively taking a food out of circulation, that's sacrilege. You don't do that.
But there's some reasons here. Let me play devil's advocate
here we go.
On this. That now that government is in control of a large part of our health care, and that we're sharing costs, and that we're going to be picking up so many people on Medicaid, I've heard this. The reason we have seatbelt laws, the reason why we have helmet laws, the reason we need to outlaw trans fat, and why we need the war on tobacco is that, fine, you go and get sick. In a previous time, you would go get sick, you'd pay for your own health care. It was none of my business. Right. Now I'm paying for your health.
Yeah,
there is an externality, the economists would say. That externality is your bad behavior is costing all of us. So therefore, all of us have the moral authority to say, you can't have cigarettes. We're going to stop selling big sugary drinks.
Yeah, I have to just call nonsense on this thing for a couple of reasons. First of all, remember the giant multi-billion-dollar tobacco settlement?
I remember it well.
Yeah, and this money was parceled out to all the states that participated in it, with the caveat the money was supposed to be used for anti-smoking initiatives, for smoking prevention, intervention, cessation among teenagers. Do you know how much of that money, what percentage of that money actually went to anti-smoking programs? Almost none. We're talking about 3 or 4%.
I mean, here in Colorado, for instance, we had of the settlement money that we got, a large percentage of it went to Read to Achieve programs for kids and to literally build sidewalks.
It became
and so what I do is I like to smoke around schools and playgrounds so I can show the kids that I paid,
that's right,
for that.
Yes. The point, though, is that a lot of these nanny culture initiatives take the form of taxes. You want a soda tax, a fat tax, higher cigarette taxes. And they always say, well, these will counteract the health implications of the activity. They almost never do. The money goes into slush funds, it goes into general funds, it goes to close budget gaps from previous years. So that dog don't hunt, as they say in the South. The other thing, and nobody's comfortable talking about this, but it's true. Chain smokers and fat people and alcoholics
die.
They are the most patriotic Americans in the world. They take themselves out of the circulation of the healthcare system long before they get very expensive. Personally, and I kind of joke about this, but it's true, I'm a cigar smoker, I'm a former heavy drinker, and I eat what I please.
Heavy drinker, the code for alky?
Oh, yes. Right. I'm a recovering alcoholic.
All right.
I quit drinking over 2 years ago.
So can we have a beer later?
You can have a beer.
All right, great.
Fine with me. You can do what you like. But my point is that I engage in several behaviors, including the occasional firing of a firearm, that would probably put me in a higher death risk category, actuarially. You know what? Fine. I always say, look, if I'm going to shave 6 months off my life, it's probably going to be those 6 months I'm hooked up to tubes. Who the hell needs that?
Well,
but the truth is,
cigarette
aside,
smoking
yeah.
Helps people die sooner. People die sooner. They don't
so
have the same
ought to be
welfare costs.
Subsidizing cigarettes
I know.
If they want to save money on healthcare costs.
But that's not the narrative.
We don't want
the
to talk
narrative
about that.
is we need to keep you healthy.
Especially for the children, because everything is for the children. Here's the other thing.
But just to make that clear,
yeah.
Actuarially speaking, if
these bad behaviors save money, they save money.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they took away the sin taxes, people would smoke more. They might die sooner, saving government a lot of money.
Wonderful idea.
Who's going to sell that? Only politically incorrect people like you would ever touch an argument like that.
That's the highest compliment anyone's paid me all week. But here's the other thing. When people started fomenting about public health initiatives, remember, public health was originally about epidemiology. The whole idea of public health was originated, hey, we've got to figure out why so many people are contracting polio. Let's wrap our minds around this. But guess what? We've pretty much eradicated polio. There's not a lot of whooping cough, measles, mumps, rubella. I mean, all these things are kicked. We've still got AIDS, but the point, and cancer. But the point is that a lot of these original epidemiologies that were the whole purpose of the public health movement are gone. But the institutions remained. The public health establishment had to find a way to stay relevant. And so that's why they moved on to behavioral preventative things. But the other thing that happened in the meantime is life expectancy got a lot longer. We're now pushing the boundaries of what the human body can actually handle. You're no longer have a life expectancy of 45 years, and if you're portly, it's a sign that you're not starving. Now we're a life expectancy in the mid to high 70s. And some scientists who study aging, gerontologists, will tell us that at the point where the median life expectancy is 82 to 85, that's where you hit the point of diminishing returns, and you've basically guaranteed that if you've prevented yourself from dying of lung cancer, you're going to die of pancreatitis or something else. So we're almost reaching that tipping point where nothing we do public health anymore will actually change the margins.
So be unhealthy?
I'm saying enjoy yourself.
What do you mean enjoy yourself?
Look, anxiety is a health risk too. Anxiety is a health risk too.
First time we would do, one of the reporters came out for our alcohol, tobacco, and firearms party, and I think it was from Westward, and he was a sports writer, and so he's looking around, and he wrote this wonderful 3-piece thing. He said, "Yeah, I'm a liberal." And I remember back when we used to have fun. We used to get laid, we used to do drugs, we used to smoke all sorts of stuff, we would drink, and now we're all eating tofu and sipping iced tea, and it's the conservatives,
it's like the old feminist
cigars,
joke, how many angry feminists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
One, damn it, just one.
You could do that way. My other punchline is, hey, that's not funny.
That's not funny.
Yeah. So, well, you're right. And I don't know many public health finger waggers who seem like they enjoy their lives a lot. Really, when was the last time you saw an anti-smoking nut who you thought enjoyed his life at all? And the anti-sugar police are basically walking around dour and sad in the deep, dark sadness, thinking that somewhere somebody's enjoying a lollipop.
Well, let me try the same thing from a different angle.
Okay.
Which is, we have built up a remarkable tolerance for the diverse lifestyles we have. I mean, think about where the homosexual community was just a couple of decades ago compared to now, where gay civil unions or gay marriages is a virtual certainty.
And you remember in the 80s when AIDS came up, it was immediately politically verboten to suggest that AIDS was essentially a homosexual virus. That, well, no, it's everybody. The U.S. government spent a lot of money to say, no, it's heterosexual transmission too. So we're not allowed to connect public health to some behaviors, but we are allowed to connect public health to other behaviors. I find that interesting.
But here in this world of great diversity, where we have, if you want to treat your cancer with holistic medicines and channeling goddesses through crystals or whatever it is, you can do so, and people respect that, and they should. But when it comes to
at least publicly they respect it.
That guy who wants to enjoy his bag of Cheetos and a 6-pack of beer, that somehow is awful, and that's government's responsibility to stop him from doing that.
You know, I almost would have understood it if it was just about smoking. I mean, secondhand smoke, whether you agree that it can cause cancer or not, it can be annoying to some people. I mean, I love to smoke cigars, but there are some brands of cigarettes I'm like, oh God, that smells horrible. And I can understand, especially a mother with children, they don't want to be around cigarettes, fine. In France, they tell you to go sit at another table if you don't like the smoke. But here we say fine. But there's no secondhand fat. It doesn't exist. And so what's the point of all this mattering? There is none. There's no secondhand fat. So, my cheesesteak can't possibly make you less healthy. What, are you going to condemn me because you don't want to look at it because it might tempt you? Well, tough. Wear a blindfold.
The market goes in different places. I live in Boulder, a very hippy-dippy kind of place, very elitist place, and they were the prime movers in the state for the cigarette bans in restaurants. But before that happened, several restaurants turned non-smoking. Mm-hmm. Several bars turned non-smoking because 70-80% of the people in Boulder don't like to smoke. The marketplace drew them there.
Just fine.
But what I don't understand is why we protect some minorities. I'm talking political minorities. We understand. You might burn the flag, and I hate that, but I'll protect your right to do it. Sure. Neo-Nazis get to parade. We hate them, but we understand it. Pornographers do what they do, but we say that's the price of a free society.
That's how you test your commitment to freedom, is whether or not you protect things that offend you.
I want to own a bar where I allow people to smoke, and oh my God, I can't do that. That lifestyle choice is not permitted. It's not tolerated by the same people who claim to be so very tolerant.
Gosh, you mean there's hypocrisy in this country? I'm shocked to find there's gambling here.
What I really think it is not so much intolerance as it is lazy. And here's what I mean. It's so much easier to ban smoking in every restaurant, since I don't like being around secondhand smoke either. Now I know everywhere I go I won't have to deal with that. Instead of actually having to go, oh no, that's too smoky over there.
But it never stops there. In New York City right now, it is illegal to smoke in Central Park outside. I'm not making that up. There are places near Washington, D.C., in the area I live, where they've actually tried to ban smoking on public sidewalks. The only reason I think that hasn't caught on is because the mayor of Friendship Heights, Maryland, which is a close-in suburb to Washington, D.C., Alfred Muller, I think his name was, he tried 10, 15 years ago to ban public smoking outdoors, and then he got caught molesting a young boy in the bathroom at the National Cathedral, and so his name was Mud, and that thing died. Were it not for his weird proclivities and his disgusting behavior, that would probably be law right now. But eventually somebody's going to pick up that baton and run with it. Outdoor smoking, there are plenty of beaches where it's illegal to smoke, up and down the east and west coasts. So these things are going to take on more and more meaning. And we've also heard now of condominiums and apartment buildings where they say you may not smoke in your own homes. And last week, this really struck me. I was in Manassas, Virginia, doing an interview with this wonderful young entrepreneur, 23-year-old cigar shop owner who's been running this place since he was 20. Amazing entrepreneur story. And as I was leaving, these 3 police were getting out of their car just in the strip mall. And I said, hey guys, any of you a cigar smoker? I'd love to share a cigar with you, just because I like to, I slip a $10 bill to a soldier in an airport and say the next beer's on me. I just like to do that kind of stuff. So those were the cops. And they said, no, we don't smoke cigars. And I said, well, not on duty maybe, but can I give you a cigar for later? And one of them looked at me and said, no, we're not allowed. No tobacco. No tobacco. We'll lose our jobs. It's an insurance rate thing. And the other guy, the older one, said, I'm retiring in 2 years. I'll come and see you. So now we've gotten to the point where employers are intruding on people's personal freedoms as a condition of having a job.
Let's push this forward, though.
Yeah.
I understand a maternal instinct of many that want you to live a better life. That's good. That's why we have so many great self-help books and diets and this and that.
But it's elective.
Right. It is elective, and it's terrific. When I say that this is truly dangerous, people look at it and go, yeah, Bloomberg's trying to get rid of big sodas, big sugary sodas. That's not danger. That's not, they're not taking your guns. They're not taking away your right to free speech. They're just taking away your big drinks. So you're going to have to buy 2 drinks.
No, but what they are doing, though, is I believe that a fight against large-size soft drinks is a prelude to movie popcorn, which is a prelude to baked potatoes or whatever. And along the way, the lawyers learn how to work the system. They learn how to manage the legal peculiarities of fighting against this sort of First Amendment law problem. And so when it gets to something that really matters, like a Second Amendment case or something like that, these will be the very same lawyers who will be fighting those battles, are the ones who are banning popcorn and soft drinks today. And they will use these smaller trial balloon cases as test cases to learn how to push something more dangerous through.
I'll go one further.
Okay.
In that,
I thought you might.
In that the more we put these things out of reach, the more naughty they become, and the more we treat people like children. They say, you can't have this.
Yeah.
No, Timmy, no more cookies before breakfast. The more people don't disappoint. Let me give you my case in point.
The forbidden fruit syndrome.
Right. I look at drinking ages. Now, here in Colorado, we used to have this terrific system. At 18, you could drink 3.2 beer.
Right.
You could get drunk.
We had this in Ohio when I grew up.
You couldn't kill yourself on it. I mean,
training wheel beer.
Right, training wheel liquor. You couldn't poison yourself on it. You could do damage and you could do terrible things, but it taught you how to drink. By 21, then you could have hard liquor, and it kind of got you ready for it.
Yeah,
Today,
in France, 13-year-olds
right.
drink wine at the table.
Right.
I mean, it's, everybody's got a different way of looking at it.
Today, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and others are trying to tackle this issue of binge drinking. And up at my neck of the woods, up at the University of Colorado, every year or two, there are people who die
from alcohol
poisoning
yeah,
because they've never been taught how to drink. It's not. Listen, I don't like looking to France for anything, but in France, there's no drinking age. Kids learn to drink at home. Do you think when they turn 18 or could get it underage when they're 19 that they're going to poison themselves?
Right.
We treat people like children. They don't disappoint. When we force people to wear seatbelts, there's something about it that says, well, I'm safer now. I drive a little bit more recklessly. The more we let government treat us like kids, the more we're open to the idea of being treated like kids, whether it's, hey, I don't need to save for my own retirement.
Yeah.
Daddy's doing that
I think
for me.
you're absolutely right. I find the forbidden fruit syndrome and the human behavioral part of it fascinating. You remember a couple of years ago in Chicago, they banned the sale of foie gras, duck liver, foie gras. And this is a very expensive product. You would pay $50 for a plate of it, and they give you a complimentary crouton garnish and some parsley. Right. But you pay $50 for this little portion of foie gras. And all of a sudden, they said, here's the date. After this, it's illegal to sell it. Now, note that they didn't draft the law and said it's illegal to eat it, possess it, trade it, have it, eat it, whatever. They said it's illegal to sell it, and they just wanted restaurants to stop doing it. And this, of course, was an animal rights nut thing. Well, the restaurants got together, and they kind of quietly rebranded themselves as Duck Easies, and that's actually what they called themselves, Duck Easies. And here's what they did. Instead of paying $50 for the foie gras and give you a complimentary garnish and a crouton, you paid $50 for the garnish and the crouton, and they threw in the foie gras for free. And people did this, and all of a sudden the aldermen scratched their head and said, yeah, we're toast. We cannot possibly compete with this. Human nature will find a way, always will find a way. But the problem is then nobody's going to die from eating a plate of foie gras, but it is possible to poison yourself with alcohol. It is possible to overdose on heroin. It is entirely possible to do something because you want to throw your middle finger at society and say, screw you, I'll live how I want, and then it is possible to go overboard.
Is there a middle ground here? Let me give you a couple of examples. The law that says that producers of food have to list the ingredients that are in there. That I love. I got to say, I look at it.
I'm eating low carb. I literally don't buy anything in the grocery store unless I know how many carbs are in it.
Saying, here is truth. I've got a special needs kid, and he needs a very weird diet, so I'm always looking at these labels to make sure there's nothing dairy in there. That helps me out. That's a regulation. These companies might not do it without it. Why is that good, and going one more step is bad?
Well, when the National Food Labeling and Education Act, the NLEA, came up, it wasn't a sudden culture shock for everybody. It was a little bit like your smoking bans in bars, where some started to do it ahead of the law because they found a market reason to do it. There were several big companies and lots of little ones who before I think it was 72, I might be wrong, before the NLEA came into place, who were already labeling their food with fat content, with calories, with grams of this and grams of that, vitamin content for fortified foods. So it was a matter of the government saying, hey, this is actually a good practice that some people are doing. Let's have everybody do this. But it didn't start as a government edict. It started as some companies seeing a competitive advantage in providing the information. usually as health foods. This granola gives you this amount of your recommended daily allowance of niacin. We saw it in cereal commercials first. So that was really the government codifying and saying, we believe there's societal value in everybody doing this. And nobody's really argued about that. Nobody really now says, oh, it's horrible that I have to look at calorie content on a bag of Cheetos. Where the complaint comes in now, it's interesting, is at restaurants. A lot of people still don't like seeing the fat grams on the menu board at McDonald's. That they see as a more intrusive thing. For a variety of reasons.
Although that information has been available as well. You go online,
websites, yeah.
or you ask them for it, and they'll give it to you. It's not like it's hidden.
Well, the problem, though, with those laws is they were pushed so hard by trial lawyers because they know it's a prelude for a lawsuit. As soon as you declare this side order of mashed potatoes has 400 calories, it's an invitation for a lawyer to come in, order it to go, and have it sent out to be analyzed in a lab. And if it varies by 10% this way or 15% that way, they'll sue you. It's a false statement, it's a hidden thing, it's whatever it is. There's all sorts of torts that favor that, and it will happen.
All right, less than 2 minutes left. Let me ask you to pull this all together.
Okay.
We live in the most obese nation on the planet, and whoever thought that poor people would ever have a problem with obesity?
Right.
There's not a poor person in Ethiopia that wouldn't switch with being a poor person here. But bring it all together. Doesn't government have some role in keeping us healthy, to make us have good decisions?
Look, you're talking about the bright line between government education and government action. I think it's perfectly fine for the USDA or the FDA to spend money on TV commercials that say smoking increases your risk of lung cancer. Perfectly fine. I don't think it's okay for the FDA to say we need a $4 a pack punitive tax on cigarettes to try to change people's behavior forcibly. I think that's troublesome. Likewise, I think it's perfectly okay for the FDA to put, or the USDA, either one, to put ads in inner cities that says, hey, moms, if you've never had a chemistry class about nutrition, tuna fish good, cheeseburger not so good for your kids. Great. I think that's perfectly fine. But again, when you get to the point where the government is choosing winners and losers, picking this food is okay for food stamp benefits, that food not so okay, we get into this troublesome area where the government is intervening directly in our lives instead of just giving us tools where we can be responsible.
Wrap it up. Go ahead. Go ahead and have that cigar and feel okay.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Enjoy
Celebrate
your
life.
Anxiety is a health risk. If you let the government get to you, you'll probably die earlier than if you had just been happy and done what you want.
Well, me and the hostess company is going to have a small celebration next week. David, thank you. Check out dailycaller.com. Listen for me on Sundays at KHOW Radio. By all means, check us out, independenceinstitute.org. Tell a friend. We'll see you next week.